The following video contains language that may be inappropriate for young viewers. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Welcome to Behind the Bars, where we bring the unseen and the unheard stories from the depths of the prison system to the forefront. I'm your host, Jason Boss, and together we'll explore the madness, the chaos, and the harsh realities hidden behind the steel doors of prisons worldwide. From the local jailhouse to death row across the world, we'll show you the isolation, the seclusion, and the decades spent enduring unimaginable conditions. These are the stories of survival, struggle, and humanity in places most of us will never see. We're here to shine a light on what society often forgets, the voices of the incarcerated. Each story is real, each voice is authentic, and every moment reveals the raw, unfiltered truth of life behind the bars. Join me for a journey like no other, a journey into the darkness, the truth, and the resilience of the human spirit. This is Behind the Bars, real life, real stories.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jason Boss, and you are on the record with Behind the Bars. And tonight I have one of my, what I would say a best friend that I have that is in death row, that has been there for a long time. I consider this guy a blood brother to me, and he has done over 25 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I'd like to introduce you with this very first podcast to Charles Mamou Jr., who goes by the name of Chucky. Charles, Chucky, how are you doing, my brother?
Man, look, I'm always doing good after an introduction like that. I mean, you are very poetic with your introductions, but I'm fine, brother.
Right on. Okay, well, welcome to this podcast. Let's begin. Chucky, how old are you right now?
I made 50 on December 6th of past year, 2024.
And it's 50 on 50 on the dot. And you were incarcerated in what year?
Well, actually, I got arrested December 10, 1998, and I was sentenced to death row on November of 1999.
Okay, so that's about a 3-month span from the time you were arrested to the time you were on death row. Now, that sounds like a very short amount of time compared to some guys that are on the county jail for 6 years. How is it possible that you ended up in death row in basically under 4 months?
It was different time back then, though. So, like I said, I got arrested December 10, 1998, but I didn't go to Harris County to get arraigned until June. Well, no, I think it was July 2nd of 1999 is when I arrived in Harris County. I was arraigned September. In fact, give me 1 second, I can give you the exact date. I wrote it down.
It's not a huge thing. I'm just trying to get a rough timeline here. Okay, so you were in Harris County, and so from there, how long was it before you? When did your trial start?
Okay, so first is when I got arraigned, and my trial started October 1st, 1999. So a month later, October 4th, 1999.
October.
So a month later is when my trial started. From the time I was officially indicted, officially arraigned in Harris County.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's you've been doing over 25 years, it looks like, right as it stands. How have you maintained your sanity in these 25 years in death row?
Well, that's a good question, and believe it or not, I get asked that question repeatedly by anyone that I meet at the beginning, and I try to. The best explanation I give them is, without family, friends, support, I probably would have a very difficult time. I'm assuming I would, because there's nothing special about me, right? So, box like everybody else, at 365 days out of the year, at least 310 of those days, we're a 24-hour day by yourself. So, recreation you want to be technical about it, 365 days you're alone, period. But I do have family and friends who was down with me from day one, who, there's not too much negotiating going on about my needs and looking out for me.
So family and friends, and them just supporting your needs is basically what you were saying on this.
Right.
Okay. So let's go back. Let's take it. Let's go to the very beginning. What is your earliest memories of a child?
Well, when I was young, around 4 or 5 years old, and so I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana, but around 2 or 3 we moved to Houston, Texas, and that's when my parents decided to divorce, separate, and work out. And we spent like the next 3 years in Houston, living in the projects, the notorious South Lawn projects where murdered dead bodies was all over the place. And then from there we went back from South Lawn, which is Third Ward, Houston, Texas, back to Louisiana. My grandmother was ill, and we've been there ever since. She died shortly after we arrived.
And this was when you were around 3 or 4?
Well, I was at the time when we returned back to Louisiana. I was about 5, about 5 or 6 years old at the time, and around 3 or 4 we moved to Houston, but we've been in Louisiana ever since. And I didn't suffer no abuse. I didn't suffer no neglect. I was raised by women. My mother, my grandmother, my aunt. The neighbors was women. The community I grew up in was very female dominated because there was no real man or fatherly presence in our neighborhood. So as I grew up, I could never tell a lie that I wasn't loved. We was actually dirt poor, but I didn't realize that. Louisiana, Southern Louisiana was a different time where there was no homeless people, there was nobody hungry because everybody fed you. All you had to do is walk outside and somebody would try to give you a plate of food. It was very community-oriented until crack cocaine hit the street.
Now, do you think being raised by women had any effect with your, like, where you're at right now? Do you think that is, do you think that missing a man in the house, a solid man, has been part of your journey of where you are now?
No, because you could have a man in the house, and if the man was still teaching you immorality or bad values, I mean, his position in the home is still waste. I was raised and reared by women, and for me, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. My predicament here on Texas Death Row, I remember years ago my mom used to come up here because she blamed herself. Maybe she could have done this, maybe she could have done that. And I told her, and we never had this conversation again after that, in the early 2000s. I said, Mom, look, you did the best job you could ever do for me. In fact, you were the perfect mother God gave me. No other mother could have gave me what you gave me. This is just the way it is. My predicament here with Texas Death Row had nothing to do with being raised wrong or having a woman raise me or a man raise me. It's just anyone of a poverty level can find themselves, especially in that era, on Texas Death Row.
Okay, so you were living with your mom and with your aunt, and when was this age when you were growing up in the projects? I think you were talking about what did that look like?
Oh, okay. Well, when we were living in the projects in Houston,
okay,
I had to have been about 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
around the beach. Yeah.
Okay.
Up to 5, because I remember when we came back to Louisiana, I had to have been about 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
around that age.
Tell me about Louisiana. Tell me about 5 and 6. Tell me about, your friends, who you hung out with. What was it like, being raised by women in this kind of a tough man world, I suppose. What's your thoughts on that?
In the 80s, when I was being mostly raised, it wasn't. At least I didn't see it as a tough man world. I just saw it as, we get to run outside, we could play till nightfall, ride our big wheels. We didn't have situations where people were getting kidnapped. Sometimes we didn't have one murder, and that was in the 70s. And that was it, man. Everybody was pretty much, if you didn't acknowledge you was related, right? So everybody was a friend. You was raised by so many people, man. It was a real tribal existence. Looking back, I didn't see it then, but knowing what I know now, it was a real tribal existence. It was one of the most beautiful times ever. And I remember going outside. If you was hungry, your mom would tell you, go on outside and get some to eat. We had fig trees, plum trees, pear trees. Man, the next neighbor, whatever didn't grow in your backyard, it grew in the neighbor's backyard. Right. And whatever didn't grow in the neighbor's next backyard on their trees, somebody had gardens and fresh cucumbers and lettuce and tomatoes. And so we ate really, we had an actually clean environment, man,
Mm-hmm. So let's take this over to friends, and this was 5 or 6. Tell me where you're. How did that go from like 6 to 10? Where was your life at? Where were you? What were you doing?
Mostly just being a kid. We had our toys. We had the neighbor friends, children. We played with them, cousins. We were a big family, So the house, every house you went into was filled with children, and you always played, bro. And every memory I can summon early on before '88 was beautiful, bro.
And were you going to school at this time?
Yeah. I attended Sunset Elementary School at the time, and it was again. I'm giving you some insight on how I can perceive it then, not how it was back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
How I perceive it now, not how it was back then, because back then, education was never a stronghold in poor communities. You just went through the motions. You showed up. If you attended class every day, you got a passing grade, right? But it was just a place where you could hang out with some different kids that wasn't a part of your community, but you still functioned like a community.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never a misbeat. I love my classmates, man. I love the childhood friends that I had, the camaraderie that we had. But education-wise, it wasn't a strong. But I won't say people didn't care, but they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't a part of their higher curriculum to really educate for inner students.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you showed up, if the school superintendent had his records, it was cool.
Mm. Did you get into any trouble with the kids? What kind of hijinks were you into?
Fighting was a part of our culture. Now, I know how I got several white friends, pen pals, and others that I consider my family, and they come from different cultures and backgrounds. So when I tell them that we fought every day, the first thing going in their mind, oh my God, that was child abuse, it was child neglect, and actually we fought today. And as soon as the fight was over, our parents would make us shake hands, dusty. Then we go to the store, get a carton of jungle juice and a 25% worth of food in. And we kicked it and chilled. It was never no malice. We grew up in a culture where they felt like the boys, especially, had to be strong for the family bloodline. Now, in retrospect, think about this. We're talking about the mid-'80s. Mm-hmm. So we was only 20 years where black people could vote in America. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that long where they had to switch their mindset into something else. So if you read books, if you know anything about history, especially the African slave trade that was going on, fight for entertainment to be tough. And this progression just kept on going in my generation. It don't exist like that now, but it was just part of our culture, part of our life.
So essentially, you're saying you guys were scrapping a lot when you guys were kids. Is that it?
Oh, every day. It was mandatory. Every day. You had to pick somebody out. I don't care who it was, but you were going to fight somebody. Cousins, neighbor's son.
Now, is this black kids, white kids, or just anybody?
No, my neighborhood was all black. Mm. In fact, my neighborhood was 80% black, 10% what they call Creole, and you have a few little Indians here or there, but yeah. So, but our inner circle was all black, yeah.
Mm. Now, when was the first time you dealt with any kind of racism, any kind of white versus black stuff? Was it when you were young?
Texas Death Row.
Mm. Okay.
Texas Death Row was the first time I had a white person call me a nigger. And people say, well, you grew up in Louisiana. Hey, bro, listen, I'm telling you, I was oblivious to the stronghold racism had until I came here. When I grew up as a teenager, a young adult, I'm not saying that racism did not circle me. I'm just saying I paid it no mind because it didn't mean nothing to me. Friends, I got white relatives, and nobody disrespected. Nobody stepped out of line with some of the shit that you hear now. But yeah, so the first time I thought people this whole time. That's a joke, but it's honest. When I got in trouble from a youth and young adult, every time I went before a white judge, he let me go. Every time I went before a black judge, he got to get some probation or jail time. Nah, I didn't experience some of the stories I've heard other guys express.
Now, tell me you said 1988 was the time that something that tragically changed for the worse. Growing up, before we hit 1988, let's talk about any time before that. And you were just growing up. It sounds like a kid's good life, right? You don't know about the evils of the world. You're just living it up. You don't really know what's up. Did you experience, besides the fighting, did you experience any other type of violence or any other kind of things as a youth?
I used to tell people, I've actually written articles about my early years as a youth, and the best way I described sunset before 1988 was the Garden of Eden. It was peaceful, bro. I'm telling you, it was none of this nefarious stuff that goes like sunset now. It's like an outlawed western town from the 1700s. In fact, my lawyers went there recently to experience Sunset, Louisiana, and they felt it was nothing like they've heard and read about in the past. It was more like just a ghost town shell of itself. Now, the population is increasing abundantly since I left, but it's not what it was. You know, when I was growing up, it was a real safe place where you could raise kids. Doors open. I'm talking about literally, doors was open, front door. Box fan in the summertime would be in the door to try to grab some air through outside because we didn't have air conditioning back then. But that's how safe we felt back then. Now, today, my mama got security cameras. Totally different.
Yeah. Now, what anything crazy that led before 1988? Before we hit that point, is there anything you remember in your childhood?
No, nothing signified a rough childhood or rough beginning for anybody, not just me, but anybody. Now, granted, I don't know everything that goes on in somebody's house. I'm pretty sure some kids might say, "Hey, that used to beat me with an iron," or my mom used to whip me with a tree branch, and yeah, in 2025, in the 21st century, we would those acts, parents beating their children. Today, we would consider that child abuse, but back then, that was just something that this was, right? So now, everything changed in 1988.
Okay, and I think I want to start 1988 on the second podcast because we got about 3 or 4 minutes left, and so I want to give everybody. I always give the last moments that we have on these podcasts to basically give a statement of anything that you would like to say that is something that can maybe help people, maybe some wisdom that you've learned, maybe something that you can help draw others from making the same mistakes that you ended up with where you are at, or anything that you want to say. The floor is completely yours.
A book called The Shack. And in the book, there was a line where the author said, "Love leaves a significant mark." And I truly believe, and I know that in this culture, Americanized culture, we throw words like love around, you know, when we engage in some sort of sexual. In America, we turn words around nonchalantly, and we use love only when we're engaged in sexual intercourse or somebody's giving us something. But I'm challenging everybody out there to learn to love without expecting something in return. And that's how we can tap into our humanity and make this world a real better place.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Okay, my brother, I am going to wrap this one up, and I can't thank you enough for being on this podcast. I can't thank you enough for your candidacy, your honesty, for being a part of this, and I will talk to you on the next podcast.
Right.